My name is Steve Emerson. I'm the visual effects supervisor at LAIKA Entertainment. And most recently, I served as the visual effects supervisor for the film Kubo and the Two Strings. It all begins with the script, right? And the script is broken down by all of the department heads. And what we'll do early on in the process is we will have everything storyboarded, and then we will create animatics from those storyboards. So we'll see animated storyboards with voices and temp music. We all get together in a big conference room and we sit down and we figure out shot by shot how we are going to be able to realize the visuals for a given film, or in the case Kubo. As a visual effects supervisor at LAIKA, our CEO, Travis Knight, he is a stop motion animator. He is passionate about stop motion. I work with and collaborate with some of the most talented people in the world when it comes to creating stop motion universes. And for me, I've been there since the Coraline days. And one of the things that I found most enchanting, that I was most excited about Coraline was that there was this level of creative problem solving in order to be able to get shots in camera using physical materials. And it reminded me, it took me back to when I was a child, before computers came into the mix. And you would go to a film and you would watch a movie and you would just wonder, how did they do that? How did they do that? And what was funny was, once computers came into the mix, it felt like a lot of that went away, because now when you see something extraordinary in a film, you can just easily dismiss it to, well, they probably did that on a computer. So it brought back this movie making magic that I felt had been largely lost for probably 20 years in the film business. When I became a visual effects supervisor at LAIKA, one thing that was very important to me was that I didn't want to lose that. We were certainly going to be adopting more technology and integrating more computer-generated elements into LAIKA's films, but we were going to be doing so in order to enable storytellers. Right? Stop motion films, they're so difficult to make. Everything needs to be hand animated. Stop motion animation, our animators, if we're lucky, we're getting 6 seconds a week out of them. Typically it's closer to 3. In the case of the skeleton monster in Kubo, we were lucky if we would get a second. Beyond that, if you're looking at a film like Kubo that is so enormous in scope, how can you create all of these worlds and environments in their entirety, right, physically, and still be responsible with a budget? So what would happen with these films is that filmmakers would come in and say, I want to tell this story, and the producer would go through it, and it's their job to say, okay, we need to simplify this. We need to rethink certain visuals or take certain sequences out, because we just can't do all of it in camera. And so that was really what began the idea of creating hybrid films at LAIKA, was that we were going to create these universes and we were going to get as much as possible in camera. But when the stages fell short, then it was our job to be able to step in and offer solutions to be able to get whatever visual that filmmaker wanted in order to be able to tell that story. And from Paranorman to the Box Trolls and now to Kubo, the responsibility that we've shouldered has certainly gotten larger and larger as the films themselves in scope have gotten larger and larger. But we're still working with essentially the same production budget and a very similar crew that we were back in the days of Coraline. I would say the largest challenge that we had on Kubo was certainly the water systems. Water is something that never plays nice with stop motion animation. We've had instances of water in past films. In Coraline, there was a shower that was turned on by Coraline accidentally, and she was sprayed with water. We did all that with 3D replacement animation, so we would print up water cycles on a 3D printer and swap them in one frame at a time. We've done a lot of work with water splashes, water running across floors that we'll use with different types of materials that you can actually pose, like KY jelly would be one, where you can actually form it and pose it and move it one frame at a time. But the thing about Kubo was that we were talking about creating oceans and giant waves and lakes, and there was going to be a lot of character interaction. It was going to be raining. Puppets were going to be jumping off the side of a boat into water systems, swimming through water systems, and going underwater. It was at the onset so overwhelming to look at in terms of a task, but at the same time it was really, really exciting, right? Because we were going to be able to problem solve something that really, at that level, at that scope, had never been done before. So what we end up doing as a department is, it doesn't matter if it's an ocean of water or if it's a background character in a crowd. We make sure that if it's going in the film, it's being built physically first, right? And we make sure that when we build something digital, it's being informed by practical tests and practical materials that are being provided to us by the animation department, by the puppet department, by the set builders at LAIKA, and that when we're realizing whatever those items are or those environments are, that we're collaborating very intensely with them prior to anything being shown to the directors. Now, in the case of the water systems, again, we had very specific artwork that we were given, and our task at the onset is, let's take this piece of artwork and let's realize it as literally as possible. How are we going to do that? And before VFX even gets into the mix, we go out on the stages and we put the animation team and the rigging team to work, and they ended up creating these really just amazing water systems using different types of materials, from garbage bags to shower curtains. And they had this iron mesh that would undulate and roll like an ocean. And then they would lay these materials over the top of them and light them very specifically so that we could read different types of patterning on those surfaces. And then we'll watch all those tests together as a team, and the production designer, the director's starting to get into the mix at that point, and again, all the other department heads. We watch these tests and we say, that looks amazing, that looks cool, we love that about this. And then we'll take all those cues and characteristics from those physical tests, and then we will do a photorealistic version of that to create the base of what would become a water system. And at that point, it's iterating, it's adding style, it's figuring out everything from churn to spray to white caps. All of these elements that would eventually make up that water system, they all have to be designed so that they will ultimately suit the style of the film and feel like they belong in Kubo's world. And also, for all of those elements, we need physical reference. So the art department they will create water churn for us out of paper and show us what that looks like. And then we'll take an element like that and we'll do, again, another photorealistic interpretation of that and fold it into our water system, until we finally land on something that feels different. It feels like it belongs in that world, that it's exciting, it's distinctive. And when we finally hit that point for Kubo and the Two Strings, for that water system, I think it had been about 8 months of development. And then it was a good year before we got into a real groove with all the water work.